Hey everyone, Grayson the Bard here, and welcome back to day 59 of the Hunt-A-Day. I am still so amped up from yesterday with Pobarubarumu, and I am excited to continue to fight these frontier monsters, and I wanted to show off this guy. He is, I think, if you have seen a non-Espinas frontier monster, you have probably seen this guy. A lot of people really want him back in the main line, and I kind of agree. I'll talk about it a little bit in this video, but today we are fighting Akura Vashimu. If there is one thing you can say about Frontier, it is that it is not shy about introducing unique mechanic monsters and mechanically intensive fights. And Akura Vashimu definitely fits the bill for both of those. Now, just starting off with the obviously really cool stuff, Akura Vashimu is a massive crystalline scorpion that lives out in the desert. When you first encounter it, all you see is the tip of its tail, which is this like crystal pine coney thingamajigger that it sticks out of the ground to kind of like probe for threats or prey. Or again, I'm not like super familiar with the lore. I'm just going off of like what I see in the hunt itself. And when you approach it or throw something at it, it will whip around out of the sand and just attempt to bludgeon you as the start of the fight. And I think that's really neat. I think that's a cool way. It does kind of what, Basarios and Nibblesnarf do, where they start the fight kind of in like an inert state, kind of pretending to be either a rock formation or a sand dune, respectively, and only becoming like violent when the hunter approaches. And I think that's cool. I like that with monsters, but I also like how Akura Vashimu kind of like flips that on its head, where Nibblesnarf and Basarios are very like passive and not particularly threatening creatures until they are attacked. Akura Vashimu is a predator and is very aggressive, very much taking like a desert ambush predator approach, and I really enjoy that a lot. I also just like scorpions. I think they're cool looking animals. I am a little freak, and I like bugs just in my day-to-day, so I really enjoy a nice, well-designed bug monster. And I think Akura Vashimu really takes this is a big scorpion, and makes it fit in like a Monster Hunter game with the crystalline formations on its claws and tail. And I don't know if this was intentional, but there's kind of like a general rule of thumb where the larger the scorpion, the less damaging its venom is, and the more you have to worry about its claws, more so than its stinger and venom. So I don't know if it was intentional that Akura Vashimu is massive, so it doesn't even have a stinger. It's got the crystalline growths on the back of its tail that it will shoot a beam out of, which we'll talk about in a second. You only ever, or at least so far, I have only ever seen Akura Vashimu at night. I have not fought an Akura Vashimu during the day, so I don't know how it looks in the light. But I love how the dark blue-black carapace contrasts with it has these red tufts of fur that are kind of sticking out in between the carapace panels. I think that's a really good look. It contrasts really well. I enjoy the hell out of it. And the big crystalline growths on its head, tails, and claw are all kind of dumb and silly and fantastical, but they don't feel out of place. They feel natural. This would be something that it was using to armor itself. So aesthetically, Akura Vashimu is a 10 out of 10 for me. Just by looks alone, I want to see it again, or something like it. Just give us another big bug. Give us another scorpion, please. Spiders are fine, but scorpions are where it's at, Capcom. That or a beetle, like a big Hercules or stag beetle with a massive horn, I want them. But yeah, Akura Vashimu looks awesome, looks great. It's a really cool, well-designed monster. In terms of its fight, it is pretty simplistic. I'm fighting the high-rank version of it, and it has, what you would expect a scorpion to be able to do. It will attack you with its tail, it'll attack you with its claws, it'll spin around and do kind of like a Beyblade spin-to-win maneuver. But its attack patterns in general, its physical attacks and what it does with its tail are generally pretty simple. It has a few cool things where it will shoot a crystallization laser thing at you from the tip of its tail, which if it connects with you, unless you are like me and your armor is fully resistant to all statuses, thank you to, there's a doc with armor sets for this rank that really helped me out. It will give you a unique status ailment crystallization, which covers you in crystals that you have to roll to shake off as it very rapidly depletes your stamina until they eventually explode for a big old burst of damage. And I think that's it's a cool way to do poison. I am not the biggest fan of, like, standard poison in JRPGs, or, like, RPGs in general, where it just kind of, like, very slowly takes down your health, and it's never incredibly threatening, but it's just kind of annoying. In a game like Monster Hunter, stamina is much more damaging when it gets depleted than health is, I feel. And so crystallization attacking your ability to dodge and get out of the way while also dealing damage to you is, I think, a really, really cool, unique way to approach that kind of, like, poisoned, debilitated status that we have not seen in Monster Hunter since, and I would love to see it come back some way. It will also, at times, slam its tail down into the sand and leave that big crystal pinecone thing in the ground, where it will eventually, like, grow and then explode in a massive explosion. And what's neat is a lot of the times Akuruvashimu will stay by that pinecone until it explodes to kind of, like, bait the hunter into being close enough in range to deal with the explosion. Kind of a risk-reward deal. I'm assuming you can probably roll through the actual hurt box of the explosion, though. But those moves aside, that is not where the mechanical intensity of Akuruvashimu comes in. Now you hunters at home may be looking at Akuruvashimu's tail and thinking, Grayson, you fool! Why aren't you trying to cut that big meaty thing off? Clearly it's ripe for the chopping, and you're right. That would be a very satisfying tail cut. Allow me to, from the Monster Hunter Wiki, read to you, word for word, the requirements for chopping off Akuruvashimu's tail. Ahem. First, its crystals must be broken on head and pincers. Then, the head and pincers themselves must be broken. Next, it must be releasing blue blood. Break one of its parts, and then it will fall on its back. And only then can the tail be cut at a certain level of health, and if its blood is flashing blue and red. The severed tail will yield 2 carves, tail and tip, if the tail is broken. What does that mean, you may ask, about releasing blue blood and if its blood is flashing blue and red? Well, Akuruvashimu has another unique mechanic to it, where depending on the color of its blood as you are attacking it, it will have different attack patterns and different, like, effects on its body. And you can only cut its tail at certain points. And if you deal too much damage, or not enough damage, when you get the monster to flip over on its back, you won't be able to cut its tail. If you don't break all of its parts before flipping it over on its back, you won't be able to cut its tail. It is such a cool but unnecessarily complex way to deal with cutting up this monster that I simultaneously love it and absolutely hate it. It is incredibly MMO, and it works well for the kind of game that Monster Hunter Frontier is, but I don't know if I want it back. No, I do know. I don't want it back in a future mainline Monster Hunter game as is. I think they can still do something with the mechanical complexity, like maybe take out the blood requirements. Like, yes, maybe you have to break all of the crystals off of it before you can cut the tail. That's fine. That's still kind of tough to do with how much, like, you bounce off of the crystals on Akuruvashimu, unless your weapons have purple sharpness. And I think the color of the blood as it comes out of the monster dictating what move pattern it is a cool way to communicate to the hunter how they're supposed to be fighting it. So I still like that idea. I just don't want it tied to the tail cutting. That is the reason why I'm not the biggest fan on Akuruvashimu coming back, is because I don't want to have to deal with that, especially not in random multiplayer lobbies. As much as I love y'all, randos in multiplayer have a tendency to just go full unga bunga and not particularly care about, like, mechanical stuff. But enough about what I want, let's talk about what I expect. I think Akuruvashimu is very likely to come back sooner rather than later. Like I said before, Akuruvashimu is popular. One of the more well-known frontier monsters to, the non-frontier playing fan base. And I think the concept of like giant scorpion, it gets people excited. They want to see this monster. They want to see it again. Capcom has stated that they keep an eye on like the will of the community, so I would be surprised if Akura Vashimu didn't show up. In terms of showing up in Wilds, I could definitely see this thing hanging around the... It's been so long since I played the demo now that I don't remember the name of the area, the Windswept Heath. That's a magic card. The desert area. I think I could easily see this guy in the desert area of Wilds, and I think he is a good fit. So I'm going to say like a 6 or 7 chance of returning in Monster Hunter Wilds. And then I think, again, just because of how popular he is, about like a full 10 out of 10 for coming back in a future mainline game. Talked a bit longer than I was expecting with this guy, but there is a lot to talk about. So thank you all so much for watching, but I'm going to end the ramble here. Like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. Don't if you don't. And until next time, I'll see you next time.